I don't know who needs to hear this, but I wanted to share some things that I learned from being married for 5.5 years and then now in the process of getting divorced. As of the making of this video, I have been separated from my ex-wife um, for just over 5 months. Here where I am in Canada, you have to wait 1 year before you could actually be divorced. And so the stipulation is that you have to spend 1 year apart or separated, as they say. And then after you're separated for 1 year, you can file your paperwork for a divorce. And within a few months, generally, you'll be divorced, assuming you filed your paperwork correctly. So just some background on myself. I thought at the age of 33, 34, that when I got engaged, proposed, that I knew what I was doing. I thought, at this age, which I felt was late, frankly, I would have preferred to got married before I was like 30, or at 30. Um, I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I had spent a lot of time in my 20s, dating, and like I understood what a good person was for me, like a good match, and that I was good at like weeding out what would be great in a marriage. And I am here to tell you I did not do that well. So I think here are some things that, looking back, um, maybe seem obvious to some people, but weren't always obvious to me. And I think that's because my mindset was wrong. Um, so here are some things that I learned from being married. I think number one thing that you need to understand about yourself and your partner. So I'm not just talking about when you look at your partner, but how your partner looks at you and what they say to you, is that you need to accept everything about them. You need to be able to think about it. Just maybe take a second right now, take a minute right now, even pause the video or whatever you want to do, and just sit down and just think, okay, I'm dating this person. Here are all the things they that make them who they are, because there's going to be good and bad things, right? Or what we classify as bad. Am I okay with all of these things? Can I live with them? Or if I look down the road, 5 years, 6 months, whatever it is, and like, let's say you're living with them now, right? Am I going to get so frustrated, or is it going to annoy me that it's going to eat away at me? Or am I okay with these things and I'll work around it? Whether it is you might pick up the slack of it, or you'll just accept it and be like, fine, I'm not happy about it. Like, I'm not like, woo, but I'm okay with it happening, and it's like, okay, fine. Maybe I'll give some quick examples. Like, one thing might be the person you're dating is messy, right? They leave their clothes on the floor. That's what they do. They come home from work or in the morning or whatever it is, and instead of putting their dirty clothes in the hamper, they just like leave it on the floor. Or they take their socks off and they go sit on the couch or whatever, and they just leave their socks, dirty socks on the floor, and you're constantly seeing it around, and perhaps you're someone who's clean, and so then you like pick up after them. So if that's something that bothers you, just think about it. Am I okay dealing with that for the rest of your life, essentially? Because the idea is you're getting married for life, right? I know it doesn't always turn out that way, it didn't in my case, but that is what is supposed to be happening. Another example might be maybe the person smokes. Maybe they smoke cigarettes and maybe you don't like smoking. You don't like kissing somebody who smokes, right? Because, it has a smoker breath or whatever. And are you okay with that? And maybe you can talk to them and say, hey, I don't like kissing smoker breath. Can you chew some gum or brush your teeth or whatever before we make out? I don't know. And maybe they'll say, yeah, I can do that. Okay. But you need to understand that even though you might have had that conversation with your partner, they may not do it all the time. Because something we all need to when we're thinking about somebody else, understand that you can't change other people. They can change themselves. It is possible for somebody to change, but we can't expect that to happen. Now, it's great. Maybe they just quit smoking, as an example. Maybe they're like, you know what? I'm going to quit smoking. That's fabulous. Or I'm going to pick up my clothes because I realize being dirty and leaving all my dirty socks and clothes on the floor is whatever. It's like I realize that's not something I can do anymore. And they make the change. They might do that, but most of the time people don't change things unless they themselves want to change. They're not going to change for you or me or somebody else. They're only going to change for themselves if they really want to do it. Another good example of this is people losing weight. People try all sorts of ways to lose weight, all sorts of diets and routines and all this kind of stuff. But it really comes down to what you want for yourself. Because if you're trying to lose weight for somebody else, you might lose some weight in the short term, but in the long term, it's going to be you need to do it for yourself. So that's one of the first things that I learned. I went into a marriage, into an engagement with a thought that this person I'm going to be with will change. I remember saying this phrase to everybody, friends and family, and thinking back on it, I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I don't know. I don't know why somebody didn't slap me or like say like, are you sure you should be getting married? I used to say she's like a diamond in the rough, in that when we get married and stuff, I'm going to mold her and like I'm going to cut the diamond and she's going to become like a beautiful, beautiful diamond. So she's not like the crude diamond, like so it's going to be like the cut one that goes in the engagement ring or in the wedding ring or whatever. It was like the dumbest thing I used to say, a diamond in the rough. Just over time, I'm going to mold her. Ridiculous. Now, it's not to say that she didn't change over time. She did, because people change, life happens, things happen to people. And that's actually one of my second points is that people will change, but it doesn't mean they're going to change in the way you want them to change. And you can even think about that with yourself. Like, just look at yourself, whatever age you are now. Like, I'm 39. And then before I was married, I was like 30, 34 or whatever. And then uh, even in my 20s, when I look back at all these different life stages, I remember seeing myself in my early 30s and being like, oh my God, I'm so improved from my 20s. I'm so ready for uh, marriage. Like, I won't make these mistakes, blah, 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 blah. Like, I had changed. And I had changed a lot. I had changed a lot. It was true. But now just put yourself into a marriage. You're going to be with somebody else who is going to change, and they're going to change in certain ways. And maybe some of those ways you don't like. That's another part of marriage that people generally don't talk about. I'll go to another point here, which kind of bleeds into the changing thing. Before anybody gets into a serious relationship, not even marriage, but a serious relationship, where you're thinking like this could be the one, and you might propose, you got to ask the tough questions. You got to ask the tough questions. Like maybe you don't want to do this on like the first, second, third date, right? You don't want to be like, hey, if we get married, we're gonna have 10 kids and like live on out in the boonies here on a farm and raise horses and blah. Like maybe you don't want to have those questions right away. Um, maybe your dream is always to live in another country, or you want to be in a rock band or something and famous and traveling the world and X, Y, and Z thing. Now, there's a lot of different forms of tough questions. Some of them could be, what if we get pregnant and, we're not ready to have a child? Like, we're not financially ready to have a child. Or we find out that our child has some sort of disability and maybe it's going to come out with autism or something else. What are your thoughts on that? Now, you could both have the same opinion. Well, we would have the child in either way, or you could both be the other way. Well, we wouldn't. We would abort the child because, we're not ready, or dealing with a child with disabilities is too much, or whatever it is. I'm not saying any of these decisions are right or wrong. I'm just saying that these are things that should be talked about. What would happen if you lost your job, and let's say you're the guy in this case. You lost your job and you were unemployed for a year. Let's say it took a whole year. And now your partner, him or her, right? Because it could be a same-sex marriage or whatnot, is having to look after all those things. Has to bring home the money, and you're strapped financially. Is that person going to be there for you? Where they're like, well, look, uh, I'll give you like 6 months, but I can't be in the position where I will support you because finances are very important to me. Our standard of life is very important to me. Um, I wouldn't be able to look at you the same if you were at home, you know, not not working. Maybe one of them could be, what if you develop some sort of severe disease or uh, end up in a wheelchair? Have a conversation about that. Well, look, what happens if I lose my legs or something? I'm in a wheelchair. Are you going to stay with me? Like, we're not going to be able to, do the same things. You're essentially going to be looking after me a bit like a nurse, right? You're going to have to help me, etc., etc. Tough questions. Okay. Um, another thing, another point, I guess I'm calling this point number 4. Should have been numbering these from the beginning, is make sure you align on your values. I think that relates a lot to the tough questions that we talked about. You can see how there's overlap. You, like, let's say on the abortion thing or on the disease, on the disabilities thing. Um, you could think of it on a religious grounds. Maybe, one of you is religious or different religions. You're both religious, different religions. Um, how that's all going to work, because that plays into everything. And you can always think of, like, if this goes down the road when you're going to have kids, right? Because kids are always a big determining factor in when you will conflict on a lot of these things, right? If you have conflict, then it kind of comes out with kids, because it's like, well, maybe one of you is Muslim and the other one is Christian or atheist or something, and now it's like, well, how do we raise our kids? Do they go to the mosque, or do they go to the church, or they don't do anything, or like what's going to happen there? So you want to make sure that your values are aligned. So maybe you're okay with um, your kids, maybe you're an atheist, but you're okay with your kids going to a mosque and letting them make a decision. So maybe you're not like, I'm not the biggest religious person, but if they want to go do that, that's fine, and they can make their own decision. Cool. Maybe you come to that agreement. There's also, if you think about um, what you want to do in your lives, if both of you are working and have careers, what happens if one of you gets a job offer that is really good and you're going to have to move? And that would mean that the other person will have to sacrifice their job, right? And maybe they won't be in such a good position. You know, these are all things that kind of fit with the tough questions on the previous point, but also with aligning your values. It could be who does what chores at home, right? Who does the cooking? Who does the cleaning? Who does the outside stuff? And you can think of traditional roles there, but people do all different types of things. Like myself, I tended. That's not. I don't think that's the right word, but I would do all the outdoor um, things like mowing the lawn, shoveling, etc., etc. And then I would even do like the laundry. I actually find folding clothes very relaxing, so I would do the laundry, and I would cook usually like the meat or whatever for dinner because I like to barbecue and things. So that was sort of my thing, and I like baking. So if we were making desserts, I would bake um, cake or something like that. So, and then she would do the cleaning, right? So she would clean the toilets. I hate cleaning toilets. That was good for me. I did not want to clean. No, no. I'll do vacuuming, but I did not want to be cleaning toilets. I hate cleaning bathrooms. I hate it. Oh my God. Yeah. And then she would, whoever, cook dinner, the other person would clean up the dishes, that kind of thing. All this kind of leads back to, I guess you want to think of it of one key point is I'm saying is number 5. Maybe this should have been the first point is communication. Communication is key. You want to communicate. You should be communicating. The amount of times that I ended up in situations where I would be getting in trouble and I would be like, well, how was I supposed to know this? And the response would be something along the lines of, well, I thought you knew me well enough to know. And I was like, I thought you knew me well. Like, I am supposed to just know that you wanted this thing or you wanted it this way. Over, like, just communicate with your partner so you don't end up in that situation. Just be very clear with them. Say, hey, I want I don't want mayonnaise on my whatever hamburger. I want ketchup, pickles, blah, toast the bun. This is what I want. Cool. And then they'll do that for you. Now, if they didn't listen and they gave you mayonnaise on your hamburger when you didn't want it, fine. That's a different thing. And maybe it's just in this case it's just an honest small mistake. Maybe they forgot something. But if you extrapolate this to a bigger thing, like you're going out with your friends and you communicate to your partner, I'm going out with my friends on Saturday. And then, the week goes by, let's say, and the Saturday arrives and you go out with your friends and she's like, well, I don't want you to go. And you're like, okay, but I told you I was going to go, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe she or him or whoever it happens to be in this case, right? Uh, isn't happy that you're going, but you still go. And then you come back and then you're in trouble. And then it's this kind of this whole conversation where it's like, well, you should have known. I said I kind of didn't want you to go, and then you went, and I feel like left behind and abandoned, blah blah, whatever it is. Communicate with your partner. Explain to them what you're feeling, and then why you're feeling that way. Because a lot of times we might say, well, I don't like when you go out, and we don't tell them why we feel that way. And so if you really think about it, if you look back on it, sometimes we find out things about ourselves like, well, I don't like when you go out with your friends because, you're with this, I don't know, there's this one hot guy there, let's say. And I know you say he's your friend, but I don't feel comfortable with it. I don't really trust this guy, or it makes me feel a certain way. Or maybe in another example, when you leave, I have nothing to do, so I kind of feel abandoned, like I don't feel good about myself. And you might find that a lot of the stuff might come back on you as a person, which is fine, or it could actually be like a valid thing. Like this person's going out, well, everything's valid. I shouldn't say like a valid thing, but this person is going out 5 times a week with their friends, and they're really not spending much time with you. So that would be something where you would have to discuss with them and say, hey, like we need to spend more time together. Okay, so communication is key. That's number 5. Number 6, do not accept ultimatums. Never accept ultimatums. If your partner ever gives you an ultimatum, that I hate saying red flags because everybody overuses this, but that's a huge red flag. You should just move on. As soon as somebody is like, I'm going to ultimatum you, and if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. So if you go out with your friends tonight, I'm leaving. It's no. That's not the way we communicate. That's not that just leaves nowhere. That just leads to escalation. It's either you capitulate, so the person who's being told the ultimatum has to capitulate and be like, oh, okay, fine, I won't do it, or it escalates. Now, some people can maybe navigate this and drill down into it and be like, okay, well, why are you saying this? And this is where that communication comes in. Well, why are you saying this? What's causing you to think this way? Why, and you can have that discussion. That's hard for a lot of people to do, but if you can do that, that's great. And that would probably be ideal, but it speaks to the character of the person that you're talking with, that you're in a relationship with, if they start using ultimatums. Now, it might happen once, and then you might address it with them and say, look, that's not how we are going to work in a relationship, and maybe it works out. But if that happens in any sort of repeated way, no, just no. That person isn't in a healthy place if they're just going to ultimatum. That's like an abuse of power. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's not healthy. Okay, next point, which I think is 7, trust and respect, or respect and trust, however, whichever you want to put first. You need to trust the person you're with, and you also need to respect them. If you can trust them, you're on a good footing. And if you respect them. I think they kind of go hand in hand. That's why I stuck them hand in hand, because you're probably not going to trust somebody you don't respect. Like if someone's like a shady drug dealer, I don't think you're going to respect or trust them. Um, and if you respect, like maybe there's somebody at work, if you think about that, maybe there's somebody at work that you really respect, like you see they're doing well. Um, Generally, you probably trust them. Like if they were to give you advice, you'd be like, trust their advice. But this is very important for your partner. You need trust and respect. So that goes both ways. You need to feel that way, and you need to know that they trust and respect you. Okay, I think it's number 8 next. Something that I think is valuable that you should really do is get your partner to meet your friends, meet your family, maybe your extended family, right? If you can, because I know some people are in situations where they can't always get them to meet their family because they live in other countries or cities, etc., etc. Um, get them to spend some time with them, and maybe like one meeting is not enough, right? Like you got to spend a few times with them. So something that I would do is I would have board game nights or escape room nights. I ran like an escape room group, so a lot of these people were my friends, and bring my partner uh, to these events, right? We play board games, go on escape room, etc., and then just see how they interact with my friends. And it's okay, like if your partner doesn't like all of your friends, because I mean, they're not their friends per se. Um, so they might have somebody they're like, well, I'm not really into this person. Well, fine. Like all they talked about was video games, and you're not into video games. So like, why? I mean, you're probably not going to be like, woo, we're good friends now. But you get to see how they interact with other people, whether they're work friends or personal friends, with your family. So you can observe that and see if they're a different person around them or not, or if they're themselves, right? Themselves. And you'll also be able to get some feedback from your friends and family, etc., your coworkers, on your friend, or on your friend, on your partner, on the person you're dating. Um, and sometimes friends and coworkers can be a little nervous about giving that information. But if you can kind of like say to them, well, look, like just give me your honest opinion. Like it's fine. Like if if you have something bad to say, you can just tell me and actually, take that to account. And maybe what they tell you conflicts with what you've experienced. So maybe they might say like, oh, She doesn't even seem to have a sense of humor or something, or he or she or whatever doesn't seem to have a sense of humor. Okay. But you guys joke all the time in your personal lives. Well, maybe she wasn't comfortable, right? Maybe she wasn't comfortable in this, he or she. Sorry, I say she for myself because I was in a relationship with a woman. Maybe they weren't comfortable, uh, you know, being around your friends or something, and maybe they weren't joking or they didn't get something, whatever. But if they meet enough times, right, your friends and your family, etc., and they meet that person that you're dating, you'll get a good sense. Okay, then lastly, maybe I touched on this a bit at the beginning. So this is, I guess, number 9. But listen to yourself. Really think about how you feel. How do I feel about this person? I remember before I got engaged, I would have those thoughts. And like I told you, I would say this diamond in the rough thing. I also felt pressure from the families, from her family and my family, to get married. I felt in my gut, when I think back, I remember feeling this way. Like, this didn't feel right, but I thought once you were married, it would feel better. It doesn't change. Going back to the other point, it doesn't really change. You need to feel good about it before. So you got to trust yourself. You got to listen to yourself. You have to understand that in some areas, you're a little bit clouded because you're supposed to be in love with this person. And so you might be seeing things very rosy. But that's why, like I said, you should get your friends to give feedback and stuff, right? And bring this person into different situations, right? With friends, coworkers, family, etc., and see how they are. But then you got to trust yourself. Do our values align? Can I live with the fact that she would get an abortion and I wouldn't, let's say, right? Um, if we had a child ahead of time or something, right? Uh, she she or he's in this religion, I'm in this religion. Can I live with that? You really just have to sit down and evaluate all of these things. Do they really trust and respect me? Do I see they play out in their actions? Or do they sit there and they call me names, right? Maybe they did it once or twice and it was an argument. Okay, fine, right? Like we can have some nuance in this, but listen to your gut, listen to your insides about it. Don't just be clouded by the loving feelings and, oh my God, they're hot or something along that lines. Okay, I'll leave it there. Hopefully this was helpful. I realize this might be a bit of a long video, but I just felt like I should share it. Um, and I think had somebody told me a lot of these things before I got married, I wouldn't have gotten married because I would have thought about it better. And hopefully I can help somebody, with this video to make a better decision or to reaffirm a decision that you're making or going to make and say, you know what? I've done all these things and I feel great about the partner I'm with because that could totally be your situation. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Have a great day.